Dr. Chancellor Williams and his award-winning book, The Destruction of Black Civilization, has inspired many to look deeper into African history. Not only does he call for individuals to look beyond the Eurocentric perspective, but also look in between the lines of that same model. His work inspired me to do my own analysis on the question of Africa's fall. Today, I wanted to speak about one of his theories regarding the fall of Egypt, which advances an uncompromising African perspective. What up, African world? It's Team here, and welcome back to another video of African history, culture, and worldview. By supporting this channel on Patreon, you're helping in the creation of these videos and contributing to this content. The link to Patreon is in the description box below. Also, stay tuned with a word from my sponsors.
Hello, my name is Howard Dorsey. I'm 54 years old. I'm here to talk about my experience with Herbal Results. I was getting sick, so I went to the doctor, and they told me that my blood pressure was high, my cholesterol was borderline or high, so I was very sick. You know, sometimes I thought I was dying at some point. And I ordered a bottle of olive leaf extract. This is how the bottle comes in. And within the first probably week and a half, 2 weeks, I checked my blood pressure and it was back down to normal. It was like 120/80. My cholesterol went down to 125. You know, I definitely believe that olive leaf extract from Herbal Results saved my life. And that's real. I mean, I recommend it to everyone in my family, my friends, and we've seen a lot of results in that manner as well.
Purchase now at herbalresults.net.
To begin, this video will be discussing exclusively the theory of Dr. Chancellor Williams concerning how Africa lost Egypt. Every once in a while, I think it's important to go back in the annals of time and discuss ideas presented to the diaspora by our scholars. Now, of course, Egypt is still in Africa, but Dr. Chancellor Williams is referring to the ancient peopling of Egypt. He proposes that the loss of Egypt was due to the coming of migrants and invaders primarily from the Middle East, and how the original founders of Egyptian civilization were too complacent with the growing shift. Throughout this video, you'll be hearing titles such as Asian and African. In the context of his book, the term Asian is referring to the various peoples of the Middle East, and the term African is referring to what we identify as Black African today. So please keep this context in mind. Throughout my studies in African history, I haven't heard many people discuss Dr. Chancellor Williams' model for what he proposes as the displacement of the original Egyptians. You'll hear people discuss the term, but not really go into depth as to why or how this happened. Dr. Chancellor Williams was the first scholar I discovered who delineated this historical perspective from beginning to end. Others may reference the original Egyptian model, but not go into much detail. As an example, comedian Kevin Hart alluded to the original Egyptian narrative, which caused quite the stir in modern Egypt. Dr. Chancellor Williams didn't just come up with this idea, however. He put in the work to try and demonstrate his theory. He literally spent years traveling throughout the African continent, being hosted by multiple African countries. One of the most interesting things he did was to focus on the oral traditions of Africa, but not just any oral tradition. The peoples outside of the recognized officials appointed to him by the embassies were his focus. He outright rejected all others. In essence, he was seeking the oral traditions of the people and not the agreed upon establishment. This was a very interesting approach, to say the least. He was an expert at reading in between the lines of history. It was through this research style he was able to discover a traditional African democracy in existence before any modern state. So after his work, what did Dr. Chancellor Williams conclude concerning how Africa lost Egypt? From his research, Dr. Chancellor Williams proposes that the reason why the ancient narrative of the two lands existed in Egypt was because northern Egypt was slightly different from southern Egypt. He states that the Egyptian civilization originated in southern Egypt, and that the principal or first black city in Africa was Thebes. Migrants from the Middle East have settled throughout northern Egypt or the Delta region since ancient times, and so two distinct lands were at the foundation of Nile Valley civilization. In order to unify these lands, a ruler named Menes had to conquer the north and south, joining the two lands together, thus making it Egypt. Dr. Chancellor Williams suggests that at various times the Asian migrants would be strong enough to take over the north. Furthermore, when new Asian migrants attempted to invade, they were able to gain the support of the Asians already present in northern Egypt. It was through the African matrilineal system that the Asian migrants and invaders were able to transform the character of Egyptian civilization. The African matrilineal system made the Asian route to the African throne easy when compared with the generally patrilineal system of the whites. All the Asian kings had to do, whether in Lower Egypt or on the Asian continent, was to promote the marriage of royal males to the oldest sisters of African kings. The firstborn male in such a marriage, though Afro-Asian, would be the #1 candidate for the throne. According to Chancellor Williams, intermarriage played a dynamic role in Africa's loss of Egypt. Though the Asians were outnumbered, they were able to use the matrilineal system to gain legitimate power. According to the theory, African rulers in a fragmented northern Egypt were complacent in this process. Moreover, the Africans in the north attempted to establish integrationist objectives with the Asians, despite the obstinate protests of southern Egyptians. Menes had achieved the great victory, but the integration policies that followed were regarded as a betrayal of the blacks. They had lost faith in the black kings ruling from Memphis, who not only favored integration but promoted it. The steady movement of the whites from the Delta into Upper Egypt itself was proof enough for southern blacks that the Asian aim was nothing less than ultimate control of all Ethiopia. Over time, according to Dr. Chancellor Williams, the Afro-Asian population increased and they began to position themselves in power. Neither the Asians of the north or the Africans of the south fully accepted them, and this is where the character of Egypt began to drastically change. This dichotomy of identity for the Afro-Asian population created a new narrative on Egyptianness. Once in power, these Afro-Asians would enforce the idea that they alone were the real Egyptians. This idea, propagated by the Afro-Asian according to Dr. Chancellor Williams, would last through the ages. Out of this situation developed a passionate and defiant nationalism that restricted the term Egyptian to mulattoes alone. Henceforth, neither Asians or Africans were to be called Egyptians. The Afro-Asians had apparently resolved that since they could not belong to either the black or white race, they would be a race by themselves, and in their own right, the Egyptian race. It worked. Asians, if unmixed, were now called Asians, and Africans, if unmixed, were called Africans or Ethiopians. They alone would be called Egyptians, and the writers of the world would follow this classification from Homer's time to this day. This quote is a great distillation of Dr. Chancellor Williams' theory as to how Africans lost Egypt. Though he couldn't work on his project in the way he truly wanted, Dr. Chancellor Williams was able to collect information to a degree in which he was comfortable publishing. In the comments below, be sure to discuss the strengths and/or weaknesses of his theory. Also, be sure to comment on whether you've actually read his book or not, as that will give more weight to your analysis. While I'm all out, guys, if you like these videos and want to help in its continued production, consider supporting the home team on patreon.com. The link is in the description box below. Know thyself, remember your ancestors. Peace.